Tuesday, September 18th, 1973, was one of those muggy, late summer evenings where the moisture in the air didn't abate until well after the sun was down. The 6 o'clock news had reported that East and West Germany had both been controversially admitted into the United Nations. British actress Nora Nicholson, one of those faces you'd recognize but probably not be able to name, had died in London. By 8:30, horror fans had to make a tough decision. Hawaii Five-0 was on in its normal time slot on CBS and usually would have been a solid choice. That night's episode, the second of the season, a darker-than-usual serial killer episode entitled Draw Me a Killer, would have certainly appealed to horror fans. And after that, the network premiered a TV movie titled Terror on the Beach, starring Dennis Weaver, who made a mini-second career out of TV movie horror films during this era. If you missed it, Terror on the Beach is sort of like The Hills Have Eyes, but with doom buggies and hippies rather than mutants. It's charming, but just an okay watch. Not to be outdone, ABC ran their own original movie, Dying Room Only. It starred Cloris Leachman, Ross Martin, Ned Beatty, and Dabney Coleman. That's stacked cast, absolutely legendary now. It was directed by Philip Leacock, who the year earlier delivered a TV movie adaptation of John Ferris's popular novel When Michael Calls. That one, starring Michael Douglas and Ben Gazzara, was a ratings king for ABC and well received by audiences. So really, Dying Room Only was already in the lead for most horror fans' attention. Oh, but there's one last detail that should have sealed the deal. It was written by the great Richard Matheson, based on his classic 1950 short story of the same name that originally appeared in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. It's one of the Jersey-born author's best early works, and one that somehow hadn't been adapted into a Twilight Zone episode, unlike Third from the Sun, Little Lost Girl, Disappearing Act, Death Ship, and of course, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. TV movies were a big deal. Broadcast television was free, movies were not. And back then, movies weren't played all the time. They were expensive to license, especially if the title was newer and popular. So outside older, less attractive titles, the networks only showed a few a week. The rest of the broadcast day and most evenings was filled with cheaper to produce sitcoms, cop shows, variety hours, and game shows. Hell, the broadcast day would end, usually by 1 a.m., the picture blinking out only to be replaced by static until 5 the next morning. Original movies, ones you couldn't see in the theater even if you were willing to pay, became events in their own right. An entire sub-industry of independent productions aimed squarely at the networks burst onto the scene to capitalize on the situation. Sure, they couldn't spend much more than a typical court drama on the production, and the crews were the size of a television show instead of a feature film, but the math made sense. Also, in these days before home video, TV movies could be recycled frequently without much audience loss. It was a win-win for the networks, the producers, and certainly the audience. Produced by Lorimar, the company responsible for everything from The Waltons, Knots Landing, The Greatest American Hero, and Fright Night Part 2, Dying Room Only has that glorious, slightly bleached-out look and feel of vintage TV movies. It opens with a pan across the California desert, the kind of establishing shot that's basically illegal today, but was super common back in the day. The camera locks onto a sports car hustling across a dusty two-lane road in the distance, before cutting to one of those classic down-the-rural highway shots where the heat vapors rising off the asphalt distorts the view of the oncoming car. Very early 70s, and to my eyes, so very beautiful. As the credits roll, we see that this is the only thing human as far as the eyes can see. There's just endless emptiness right on through to the distant mountains. The word remote doesn't even cut it. This really is the middle of nowhere. And that's something these 70s TV movies do so exceptionally well. They visually tell their stories with such profound economy. Sure, there's no lack of expositionary dialogue in these things, clunkier and lesser hands than Matheson, but if an image can explain things, it'll be allowed to. This wasn't an art decision. Landscapes don't flub lines and require second takes. This type of storytelling is fully based in budget. That it's also the most elegant form of storytelling is just a side benefit. Viewers were different back then. Today we tend to click on a thumbnail and lean back with our arms crossed. Movies have a few minutes to persuade us to continue to watch, or we'll press stop and back out to the menu to choose something else. But in the 70s, probably as a result of a lack of choices, we settled in and let the story come to us in its own time. I hear the expression slow burn a lot today, and that can be a great description of some films, but most of what's made today is designed for immediate gratification for an ADHD audience. I believe that's also why movies are so much more exhausting today than they used to be. The upside of this is that today's cinema can be consumed equally well in any setting: a theater, a television screen, a tablet, or a phone. Removing the focus on detail, nuance, and atmosphere means that the medium we use to watch movies is simply less important. If you've seen the 1988 film The Vanishing, you've seen a direct descendant of Dining Room Only. You can add Prisoners, Gone Girl, and Searching to the list of films clearly inspired by Matheson's story. And to be fair, every one of those has moments that surpass the TV movie's meager means. But what none of them do is capture the very specific sense of sustained dread. There's something about the look and feel of these television movies that can't really be rationally described, but when you see it, you know it. Maybe it's the older 5000 series Kodak film stock or the use of limited artificial lighting. Maybe it comes down to the fabrics used in the wardrobes or the hairstyles of the era. But something in that well-worn aesthetic really gives movies of this time period a sense of idiosyncrasy and eccentricity. And is it just me, or do you feel the glow of loneliness in every frame? It's a strange thing that these movies convey so much with so little. And, side tangent, this is one of my greatest pet peeves about modern American horror. Today, with theatrical level digital photography available for the price of a goddamn iPhone, professional editing software available for cheap, and special effects artists available to hire on Fiverr, it would seem to reason that there should be an explosion of new talent making exceptional films. I don't mean to downplay the hard work that up-and-comers are doing today, but Jesus, why does the average 50-year-old made-for-TV horror film exceed just about all modern horror in look and feel? And please don't think that I just want them to throw a few old film filters over their footage. The film grain isn't what makes these old movies special. It cuts much deeper than that. Dining Room Only's story is simple, but endlessly effective in a way that only a master storyteller like Matheson can pull off. A couple, Gene and Bob, driving through rural America, stop at Arroyo Motel, a last chance sort of establishment that offers a greasy spoon restaurant and a place to crash for the night. They don't intend to stay, just to grab some food and continue their homeward journey. It's not a friendly environment. Jean excuses herself to visit the restroom, but when she returns, Bob is gone. Only a few moments have passed, but unseen events have transpired. The rest of the film is a mixture of Jean unlocking the mystery of Bob's disappearance and a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-style American Gothic nightmare. Without the chainsaw or human face masks, of course. I want to mention the film's musical score, or rather, the lack of it. Oh yeah, there's some instances of taut strings used to punctuate a sequence here or there, but in general, there's a stillness and silence to the proceedings that gives off its own weird air, as if we're watching something raw and not quite finished. I mean that in a good way. It never feels artificial enough for us to dismiss the heightened drama on screen. It's a brilliant choice. For the record, the little music that's in the film was made by Charles Fox, a 1970s TV workhorse who wrote the theme song to The Love Boat and The Match Game. His greatest contribution to music history, though, is that he, along with Laurie Lieberman, wrote the perennial hit song Killing Me Softly with his song. I find that strangely appropriate here. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of Dining Room Only is that it doesn't even flirt with supernatural themes, but still manages to evoke a blistering sense of the uncanny. If you've followed me for any amount of time, you know that I find the uncanny to be the strongest of all the emotions that the horror genre can evoke. And just for good measure, and to make sure we're all on the same page, I define uncanny as a subtle but profound, uneasy emotional response to an intuition that a seemingly normal situation is hiding deeply disturbing secrets. Dining Room Only, in spite of not being anywhere near a true classic of the genre, excels here. And again, that probably has a lot to do with the era and the circumstances that created it. I don't want to overplay my appreciation for the film any more than I want to underplay it. It's far from perfect, but it has a consistently unnerving and off-kilter vibe that I find irresistible. Now, if you weren't a child of the 70s or early 80s, this might not tickle your radar the same way it does mine. Or maybe it's not about age, but temperament. I think it may depend on why you watch movies. what you want to get out of the experience. If you only want movies that give you a carefree adrenaline rush with no energy drink crash, well, what can I say? You may want to swipe left on this one. But if you want to revel in the murkier emotional spaces, you'll find a lot to love here. There are no right or wrong answers, by the way. You like what you like. At the same time, it might be nice to be able to put the fast-paced modern world on slow burn mode and really luxuriate in some good late 20th century chills. I promise that there'll be enough fun but instantly forgettable direct-to-streaming horror flicks to enjoy every other night of the week. Maybe carve out a little time for something a bit less test-marketed and audience comfortable. Dining Room Only probably won't end up on most people's favorite films list, but it seems like the perfect off-the-beaten-track vacation that'll let you disappear from the flavors of the moment.